Thank you so much, Joan. And especially, I'm so pleased by the audience participation, the participants' participation during this webinar. And please go ahead and share any questions that you have for Joan. We've created a professional learning community here during this short webinar that we've had today. Now, during our registration process, we did ask participants or registrants to share any challenges that they were facing. And thank you, Rebecca, for your comments. So we do have some questions to start off with while you're thinking of what you would like to ask. And as I ask the question, if you would go ahead and help as well. We have a lot of experienced PLC. We have a lot of people with experience with professional learning communities. So we invite you to share your knowledge and strategies. The first question I'd like to ask Joan is, how can we limit teacher negativity and lack of open-mindedness so that there is an atmosphere of trust in our PLC?
Thank you, Jackie, for that question. And that was a question that several people wondered about when they were registering for this. One thing is, I think we always get better participation when something is voluntary. And I was thinking if, for example, at the beginning of the year, if there were several different professional development opportunities, for example, that a principal wanted his teachers or her teachers to participate in during the year, this could be one of them, along with two other ideas, so that everyone who is engaged in the PLC would be, it would be of their own volition. And also, if during the, when we looked at the scope and sequence of the PLCs, one of the important sessions, the very first session, is the introductory session, and that is really to resolve and to talk about all of the logistics that are going to happen. It's not going over content at all. It's going to be, where are you going to meet, when are you going to meet, who is going to bring the projector, and so on for the slides and the videos. During this time, it is important to establish rules and norms for the group and to come up with some guidelines and expectations. And I think, for example, it's really important that everyone participate in the activity and do it in their classroom so that they can come back and share with one another. If not everyone does this, then the PLC is not going to be as strong. So these things need to be clarified and discussed, and people need to agree if they're going to participate fully. So I think that could be a time to clarify what is expected. And during the time, and if everyone is participating, trust will build over time, I believe. That could be a way to help. Also, I think receiving a stipend is helpful for teachers to know that they are getting, it doesn't have to be their full pay, but a stipend for their time spent. And so if that is possible for districts to arrange that, I think that would also help. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan, for that response. And again, we do invite you to share your strategies as well. We did have another question in the registration. How can you change mindset about bringing instructional strategies for English learners into content classes?
Yes, there has been a tremendous shift and a change of expectations and responsibilities for content teachers with Common Core standards. And now a Common Core has been around for 5 or so years now, so teachers should be recognizing, a course content teacher should be recognizing that this is an area that they are also addressing as well. So I think if teachers are not aware of that yet, then they need to be made aware of that, and that these strategies are not just strategies that work for English learners in ESL classes or bilingual classes. These work for all students in all classes. I think just an awareness of the additional responsibilities on content teachers and their responsibility to English learners will help with that question and that challenge.
Okay, thank you, Joan. We did have a question that came in just now of what is the difference between a PLC and a grade level meeting. And we would like our participants to answer that as well. We did hear from one of our participants who commented that PLCs are laser focused on the refinement of what works and solutions. Grade level meetings are more informational on campus and grade level items. I think that is a great distinction between the two. From Jane Montes, she also is saying that a grade level meeting is mandatory. Joan, did you have anything you would want to add from this question that just came up about the difference between a PLC and grade level meeting?
I like the idea of saying it has a laser focus, because that is certainly true with the PLC Facilitator's Guide. It's just looking at instructional strategies that are research-based, whereas a grade-level meeting, there are many different items to discuss. You know, you're looking at data, you're looking at, you know, shared homework assignments, and many things come up in a grade-level meeting. So they're all important, and they make the classroom work, but the difference is the PLC is really looking at one issue. And it could be a different issue, not just professional development.
Okay, thank you. We invite you, our participants, to continue sharing your ideas as well. And in the registration process, we did have another concern that how can the PLC be presented so that the teachers buy into the idea and willingly participate?
That's a very good question and concern. And I think that data is a very good place to start for determining that English learners may need instructional strategies. I wanted to read something that was submitted by one of the participants I hope this person doesn't mind, but I thought it was very interesting. It said, we began implementation 5 years ago. The first challenge was to overcome teachers' perspectives of the value of the weekly PLC time. The next greatest barrier was trust, creating a culture of we versus us and them. Data is now seen as a means of truly guiding instruction versus an I got you. So when I think for that group of teachers, they came to data as a way to bring the group together, and it could also be a starting point, like in terms of looking at the different subgroups at the school and how are English learners performing throughout the school. And is there a danger that this English learners may become long-term English learners? In other words, maybe students who are not able to reclassify within 6 years of attending a U.S. school, because that is a time once a student hasn't reclassified within 6 years, their odds of them reclassifying become more and more slight. So it can happen, but it's more difficult for them. So we want to capture students before that happens, and looking at data can give teachers an awareness that perhaps more instructional strategies will help with that and bring them to the idea of thinking about this type of professional development.
Thank you, Joan. And we did have another question that our colleagues on the webinar have responded to as well, is if a PLC can be multi-grade. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's been responded to, yes, PLCs can cross grade levels. A grade level meeting certainly is not multi-grade. You usually have it just for the grade, so that would be another distinction. And you had commented at the beginning of the webinar that a PLC could be multi-grade.
Yes.
And is there anything else to add to that?
Well, I would just like to say that in this PLC, what the teachers will be doing with their students will be what, you know, in other words, in recommendation 1, they will choose a short, brief passage that they're already teaching, and from that they're going to pull vocabulary words. So each teacher, it wouldn't matter what grade level they're at, they would be pulling their own material from their own classroom. So it's all guided to what they would be doing with their own students, and then they share with one another their experience with that in teaching that strategy. So I definitely think that this particular PLC would work as a multi-grade. In fact, the PLC that we did in Pasadena consisted of a Spanish teacher, 2 newcomer teachers, and a social studies teacher. So they all were teaching different groups of students, and one was even teaching in a different language, but they were using the same strategies with these different groups of students, and it did work very successfully.
Thank you. And so one of our colleagues had talked about the laser focus, so that you can, whatever the focus of your PLC is, and it can be cross-grade, and that there are no specific rules for the formation of a PLC. It's what your focus is.
That's correct.
So, another question, and then we have a colleague sharing a resource here, Building Teachers' Capacity for Success. So please make note of that, our colleagues on the webinar. So I think we have time for just one more question. How can we meet the needs of teachers who come to PLCs with different agendas, especially if the PLC is loosely structured and effort and work is not being attained during the meetings?
That's a good question, and I think, again, the introductory session is a very good time to kind of set the tone. The facilitator that is either appointed or volunteers is going to be a real point person for that. I think the facilitator of the PLC should be a teacher who is well respected and a strong teacher, and one that would keep the flow going of the PLC. And then working together with the facilitator would be the timekeeper, and so that each segment, each step of the PLC could be given approximately a certain number of minutes, and then if those minutes, if we come to the end of that time, then the timekeeper could just gently encourage people to move on to the next step. And I think by having people that are responsible for keeping the meeting going would help with that. And let's see, I think those are the points I wanted to make. Yes. Well, the introductory session is a very good one for setting the tone.
Okay. Well, Joan, thank you so much for presenting in our webinar today. And for our participants, I'm going to take a few minutes to just close the webinar. Again, thank Joan for her time, and I enjoyed presenting this webinar too.
Great opportunity.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone on all the comments that came in on the chat pod. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Joan. And yes, we had a question about it being recorded. It's being recorded, and it will be archived on the REL Southwest website. Everyone who registered for this bridge event will receive a notification when the archive is posted. And please, we request that you complete the stakeholder feedback survey. The link is in the chat pod, and we invite you to continue to stay in touch with the REL Southwest by following us on Twitter and visiting us on our website and signing up for our newsletter. But most importantly, please complete the stakeholder feedback survey. That survey allows us to improve and know what kind of events to do in the future. So again, thank you to all of our participants who engaged so actively in our activities and our interaction today, and thank you to Joan and to Dahlia for the introductions.